Who needs a New Year's resolution when you can just ask Connor Hellebuyck to shut out the Nashville Predators? Find out how they pulled it off on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at AJLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Doing so, of course, is always free of charge and ensures you never miss another episode. Most of all, though, we just love and appreciate your support. Tonight's episode, obviously, we are kicking off with a big victory against the Nashville Predators, avenging the previous outing where the Jets were maybe a little bit less than ideal. You could say that second half of a back-to-back wasn't exactly the fairest assessment, but here the Jets are now. They have come away with a big win, 3-0 shutout, Connor Hellebuyck doing what Connor Hellebuyck does best, and it really leads into, hopefully, a good stretch in January, because after this, we've got 2 games. We've got later this evening, Colorado on the road. The Jets have a very busy January owing to the Four Nations face-off, so having, a good, pre-New Year's record, which the Jets certainly have, and coming away with a couple of big wins, especially against Central Division rivals, is something that you can never really take for granted. So this game, I thought the Jets came out swinging. You could really tell almost from puck drop that Winnipeg was definitely looking to make a statement. I will say the first couple of minutes were a little slower, and there were definitely some defensive frailties. The blue line for tonight's game was pretty rough. The pairings were kind of all over the place. We had Stanley with Pionk at one point, Stanley with Miller, Pionk with... I honestly had a hard time keeping track of who was playing with who. We had Coughlin playing with half of the defense. There were even shifts where I think Morrissey and DeMello got split up, so we saw Stanley and DeMello. It just felt like the Jets were trying to put Band-Aids on, a blue line that's probably ailing more than just a little bit. So, not exactly the most ideal situation. And you all know how I personally feel about, certain parts of our blue line and, their capabilities. But, for the most part, Nashville wasn't really able to generate as much as you'd expect. Winnipeg, for the most part, kept Nashville hemmed in. The top line had a pretty strong outing. The middle six, I thought, for the Jets did pretty well. The Lowry line especially was generally containing and limiting Nashville's counters. And I thought, the Ehlers line had a couple of good looks. They didn't really register anything on the board, but they had a couple of good rushes. Nemesnikov continues to still look like the odd man out on that trio, just not really able to do much with the puck, which is definitely a departure from last year. Last year, he was more creative and he was able to follow up offensively, but I'm sure that that's something the Jets are going to want to work on as they start getting into, the trade deadline months. But for now, not really a big deal. The Jets can kind of sort it out later. But for this game, I think the Jets really wanted to come out against a tough division opponent, one that has played a lot more competently recently. I know the Preds only have 11 wins on the season, so saying they have a competent December is probably not the most flattering statement, but every time we play Nashville, it's always a tough game. It's always tight forechecking, not a lot happening through the neutral zone, very sloggy hockey, and I think that was kind of the case with this game. It really says a lot when the person who opened the scoring was none other than Dylan DeMello. And if you look at who had the assists, Logan Stanley with an okay play by the blue line to seal the wall and get the puck, and then he just, gently passed it over to Morgan Barron. Barron fights off a check and then sauces a great diagonal back pass to DeMello, who apparently is a sniper now. He absolutely roofed it, and, it coming about the halfway point of the game, it felt like, the Jets finally were able to crack through. Saros, for the most part, was really strong and really kept the Jets honest in a lot of shooting angles and stuff. But finally, Winnipeg was able to break through. And then late in the game, The Preds started taking some penalties, getting themselves in some trouble, and the Jets power play, after a couple of early opportunities that didn't quite connect, hit pay dirt with Gabriel Vilardi scoring twice. Vilardi, man, he may be a power play merchant at times, but I'll tell you what, it is wonderful to have somebody who is as skilled as he is down low in front of goal. He is an unholy menace when he is anywhere near the netminder, and just continues to be a huge pain in the butt for anyone who has to make saves. So really good pickup for him. I know technically Dubois might be more influential as a center, and, he's doing pretty well for the Caps, but I'll say Vilardi is a pretty nice compensation, right? And I hope that Gabriel, when it comes time for his next contract extension, is interested in locking up with the Jets. He's certainly given prime billing here. The fans really like him. I think he's a great player. I always joke that it was the Vilardi trade more than the Dubois trade, and as much as I would like that to be true, it probably isn't if you look really hard between the margins. But for all intents and purposes, I'm just going to call it the Vilardi trade. I just think it sounds funnier, it's better, and it fits my narrative. So I'm going with it. But as far as the Jets are concerned, they really have zero qualms or can't be upset with just how good he's been. And they also can't be upset with how good Connor Hellebuyck has been. He was astounding in this game. Again, just the model of consistency and excellence. 5 shutouts. I think he's up to like a 930 save percentage this year, which is just, I don't even know what you say about it. He's down to like 2.0 goals against average, which again, not my favorite stat, but in terms of goals saved above expectation, he's already at like 32, which is really high. I think the next closest goalie is at like 21. He leads the league in shutouts, in wins. What even could you possibly say about Connor Hellebuyck? He's already been a guy who's won, Vezina, and he's been a multi-finalist, and somehow he's playing even better than he did last season. So Connor Hellebuyck is truly one of the greatest goalies that I've ever watched in my lifetime. And I think that increasingly he's got a good case to be your heart, candidate. Now, I know Kaprizov or somebody of that caliber will probably win it, but if you look at who's really carrying the load for their team game in and game out, and who has been really the most important player and most valuable player to any franchise, it is very hard for me to choose anyone other than Hellebuyck. He has just been extraordinary in a year and really an era in which goaltending in the NHL is increasingly hard to find. Teams are actually paying surprisingly high prices for mid-tier backups. It is tremendous to say that Hellebuyck is a Winnipeg Jet for the remainder of his career. So, I don't know how long he'll stay here, and I don't know how long he'll play here for. Obviously, as you start getting into your late 30s, maybe some things change. Maybe the Jets have to do some salary stuff. But I hope that he retires a Jet. It just feels like it's the most natural thing for him. I think he's going to be good for a very long time. And it just seems like as he's aging, he's somehow getting better. I didn't think that was possible, getting into his early 30s, but somehow Hellebuyck has hit even better performances at this stage of his career. The next step is turning that into some level of playoff success. Not really just him, though, that needs to hit those highs. So, yeah, what a year it's been for him already. And, another shutout to add to his increasingly impressive total. Just how can you not love that? He's already matched last season's shutout total. His career high is 6, which he did in 2019-20 and 2017-2018. He's already going to beat that, I'm pretty sure. Just 30 games in, 5 shutouts already. Have to think he's got another couple somewhere throughout the rest of the season. So incredible performances from him, even if he doesn't have another shutout anywhere. I think he'll take a 930 save percentage, right? Something absolutely unbelievable, just a jaw-dropping year from him, and I can't wait to see what he does next. But of course, I mentioned that it'd be nice if that success and maybe some other stuff translates to the postseason. And somebody, on a previous episode, they asked for a New Year's resolution list. I wasn't going to do one, but you know what? We'll go with it. We'll have some New Year's resolutions. So let's chat about what I'm hoping for from the Jets in just a brief moment. Before we go there, though, just wanted to let you know about our friends and partners at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I've had a few video or even gaming subscriptions that I didn't know about. I was paying twice for them, and you know what? Rocket Money doesn't want you to do that. They make it easy to track all of these down, and it's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subs, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subs, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. As somebody who has certainly picked up quite a few sports streaming subscriptions over the past several years, Rocket Money was very helpful in identifying things that I didn't need anymore, and I think it can be for you too. Cancel your unwanted subs and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Hey friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode as we are chatting about, Winnipeg's recent success. And really, we have, I guess, a few New Year's resolutions, right? Some of this is going to be pretty easy. Some of this is going to be perhaps a little more abstract. But let's talk about some easy ones, right? What should the Jets be looking to do in 2025? Easiest one, win more than one playoff game. I know it sounds very silly, a little bit stupid, but the Jets in the playoffs the last few years, it's not been good. Vegas, Colorado, any of these teams have really had our number. It's been a while since the Jets have straight up won a playoff series, so it'd be nice if we don't get bounced in the first round. I'm tired of watching playoff hockey for the Jets basically end right around the end of April. I'd rather have it go well into June if possible. Yeah, I know that that's a little bit of a pipe dream. It takes a lot to reach, the Stanley Cup Finals, but it'd be nice to not have to, at the bare minimum, watch the Jets win just one playoff game. It's going to take a lot for the team to have that happen, but I am hopeful this season that maybe this changes. Obviously, I do have some concerns about some of what the Jets are kind of signaling, but, there's still another 40, 50 games left of the season. So let's just kind of let the chips fall as they may, and hopefully good things come out of it. My second New Year's resolution, though, is perhaps a little more challenging. And I think it's one that maybe Winnipeg is less comfortable with. They have got to figure out where they stand on Logan Stanley in this defense. Logan, I get that he's a nice guy and he works hard, and there's never really been a question of effort with him. But I feel like the Jets just constantly make concessions to try and fit him to the lineup. And the problem is that the things that they want him to do, which specifically centers around the PK, he's just not that good at. I think it'd be one thing if he was a great penalty killer and he provided a lot of value there, but he doesn't. Because he's so tall and he's not as mobile as you would want him to be, it actually tends to be a hindrance, right? They ask him to park anywhere in front of Hellebuyck or along the sides and be that sort of shutdown cross seam really blockage, but he's not that. Because he's so tall, it actually takes him too long to get down and to block that pass. And so a lot of times power play units just pass right through him and get easy goals. I think the other thing with him is that, whether it's on the PK or at even strength, he can't really pivot that quickly. Even in a game like the Nashville game where he was generally pretty okay, he had a pretty solid night all told. I think you could still see that defensively, had the Preds been more active and more engaged and able to collect the second chance pucks, it would have been harder for him to react. That's really been true against fast teams, and I think it's especially noticeable with a guy like Stanley, who's, again, if he's not in flight, he's not going to be able to accelerate from a standstill fast enough to react. And because of this, the Jets continue to force him into the lineup at the expense of other players who could probably help the Jets move the puck up a little bit more, right? Hanela, Miller, guys like these tend to get scratched. And what's kind of crazy is that those guys are generally much better at advancing the puck and even making defensive zone exits than Stanley is. Logan can still hit a good stretch pass every now and then, but it's just not consistent enough to where I really feel like the Jets need to emphasize his skill set. I know why Winnipeg really wants to make him work, and I totally respect the attempt to try and salvage the situation, but it's been like 9 years of development, and Stanley really hasn't taken tremendous steps forward. Despite all the NHL ice time that he's been given the last couple of seasons, we're not really seeing him changing, right? And he's at the age where what he is probably what he's going to be for the remainder of his career. Had he been allowed to sort of blossom into more of an offensively minded blue liner the way that he was in junior, I think we might be having a different conversation. But instead, he's kind of been miscast into this big shutdown guy, and I feel like it's really hurt his career. I think it would have been much better for them to emphasize, his transition skating, that booming shot of his. If they'd been able to really make use of that, I think we would have been seeing a very different Logan Stanley trajectory. But they've tried to make him into this penalty killer, this defensive stalwart. He's not either of those things. And I think the Jets at some point are going to have to kind of reckon with the fact that he's not going to be that guy for them, and to stop trying to force it, right? If there's really not a natural fit in the lineup, don't kill yourself trying to make it happen, which I know the Jets will still do. I just hope that come playoff time, the Jets present their best blue line and not the one that they hope for, which has kind of been something that they've sometimes struggled to do. We all know how I feel about Bones scratching Perfetti and, Heinola and other players like that. Not necessarily Heinola, last year he was injured, but Perfetti in particular got scratched during the playoffs, and that one kind of rubbed raw. Heinola in previous seasons with, Maurice was never really given a chance, while Stanley was given a lot of a leash. So it's just frustrating to see that kind of be the hill the Jets have chosen to die on. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't be that big of a deal if Stanley wasn't asked to kind of wear a lot of different hats for the Jets. And so, for Winnipeg, this is not a team that can really afford to have more than a couple of weak links. The Jets are a team that wins by committee, and if there's a group that doesn't work, it makes it a lot harder for everyone else. So something to keep an eye out for. But the third New Year's resolution kind of ties into the Stanley thing. The Jets need to make a couple of moves. One of them is for a center, and one of them is for a defender. Now, last episode, you heard me talk about, the Jets needing a 2C, which I think is pretty achievable. There's a lot of options out there. If things got absolutely insane, Elias Pettersson's available. Apparently, the Canucks not ruling anything out, and the Jets, I don't know that they necessarily have the assets to make something like that happen, not without putting together a truly extraordinary package, but I mean, technically it is possible, so that could happen. I think Brock Nelson or a player of that type is a little more achievable, but I'm not really writing off any possibilities. Now, traditionally, we know that with the Jets, they don't do the floor shakers, right? That's not the big kind of massive game-changing trade that they're usually wanting to do. They only do it when they have to, when somebody's really disgruntled. And so far, the Jets don't seem to have that issue this year. Crossing fingers. So, Pettersson probably not coming to Winnipeg, but Brock Nelson or somebody of that caliber, I think that's a very distinct possibility. Tommy Novak wouldn't be a bad idea either. Yanni Gourde. There's all sorts of options out there. I would be thrilled with any of them. And, it also kind of takes some of the stress off of Vlad, who's really taking a beating in the 2C role, and hopefully getting him back down into the bottom six will do his game a little bit more favorability. The other part of this resolution is to find a defender from somewhere. Somebody who can really bolster the back end here, because like Winnipeg's blue line, every time Sandberg goes down, it's not good. This is the first time that we've been without Sandberg for an extended period, and it feels like it's been an eternity. So the Jets, the blue line depth is a lot thinner than I was expecting. We already came into the year with a couple of injuries. Heinola was recovering. Stanley got injured too. So, the Jets probably would do well finding some reinforcements. Maybe a top four guy, maybe an underrated second pairing player, not a third pairing guy, preferably. I don't think we really want to see that, but somebody who can help out, as a rotational option and be like a Colin Miller type, right? You don't have to go straight for like the top end. If they do, hey, I'm not complaining, right? You go after a Rasmus Anderson or something, like that'd be sick. But I'm not really setting my expectations that high. I don't think the Jets are going after somebody like that. I'd be shocked if they do, and it would be a welcome shock, don't get me wrong, but I just don't see Winnipeg trying for something like that. The Jets are one of those teams that have always worked more around the margins or within a specific budget range, and I would imagine they're going to try and do something similar this year. Sometimes I don't mind that. I think this year, though, I would like them to take a bigger swing than usual. Monahan and Toffoli last year were nice acquisitions. Maybe stylistically not what they should have gone for, but given what the Jets paid for them, I can't really complain that much necessarily. But I do think this year, make sure that you find a good fit and somebody who can really improve this team. One name up front that I've sort of wondered about, and it's not somebody that I would really associate with the Jets, but Nazem Kadri could be a center solution. He's been pretty good for Calgary, and if you get him and maybe a package with Anderson or something, and you send back a pretty big, prospect package with some big futures for a rebuilding Flames team, would they have interest in that? I'd be interested in finding out, but I think for the Jets, there's going to be all sorts of options out there. Hopefully they take advantage of at least a couple of them, because this team feels like it's too good not to build on. And we all know that when it comes to the playoffs, the Jets really do need to lean on those reinforcements. So lots to play for, lots in play for the Jets. And, it feels like it's a season ripe for something special to happen. But the only way it does is if Winnipeg takes that step, which probably won't happen for at least a couple of months. But 2025 is a big year, and let's hope it includes a cup for the Jets. But in the meantime, they still have some work straight ahead of them. Tonight, we have got Colorado on the road, which I really hate the NHL schedule makers for asking them to do Nashville and Colorado on back-to-back nights. The Jets apparently have pissed off somebody in the NHL schedule makers room somewhere. I don't know why, but we'll chat about what to expect from the Avs in just a brief moment. Hey friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us on these closing thoughts as we are chatting about Winnipeg versus Colorado coming up later this evening. This is going to be a very tough game. The Avs are now third in the Central, and yes, you can look at their goal differential, you can look at the fact that they're 11 points behind the Jets, and you might be saying to yourself, oh, that's not so bad. Why should I be worried? Well, if you actually look at who the league leaders in points and scoring are, guess what? It's Nate McKinnon and Cale Makar on defense. So, look, the Avs are one of those teams where you sort of know what you're getting with them each and every season. They're going to be a really high-flying, very fast, extremely lethal team that is going to rely on their forwards and guys like Makar because they generally can't get saves. Now, recently that's been different, right? They have swapped out their goaltending for Blackwood and Wedgwood, which, for the most part is a pretty decent tandem. I don't know that it's like the world's best tandem necessarily, but if you're looking for a goalie duo that should be able to do it, I guess you're going to get like above league average from both of them. Obviously, Blackwood's probably the stronger of the two. Wedgwood is fine. These guys are like 915, 910 save percentage types. But for the Jets, I think that's a little bit worrying, right? Because the rest of the Avs roster is pretty fast, pretty skilled. Now, what's really funny about them is that they're extremely top-heavy. Their depth really isn't scoring a lot, but those individual players on this team that can just take over a shift are really powering Colorado's offense. McKinnon, Rantanen, and Makar, they are absolutely just ripping teams apart. And it's sort of funny because you look at the rest of the team and, Middlestad's been having a solid season, kind of in that Cole Perfetti tier. Lekkonen's doing pretty well. Nichushkin finally back from suspension. He's been doing fairly decently. But, the rest of the team, you're looking at like maybe 10, 12, 15 points at most per player. And then it starts dwindling really quickly. So Colorado feels like one of those teams where if you can find a way to slow down the top line, the rest of the Avs offense really isn't that scary. But I say this, and Colorado has beaten most of the opponents that they've faced in the last couple of weeks. They've beaten Pittsburgh, they've beaten New Jersey, they've beaten Nashville, San Jose, Anaheim, Seattle, Utah. They've only lost a couple of games recently, Utah being one of them, Vancouver another. And really towards the start of December, they did lose to Carolina, but in their last 10, they're like, something like 7-3 or 8-2. So another white hot team, 4-game win streak, just like the Jets are. One of the really, I would say, up form teams recently. I know that they had a rough start and they were pretty far down in the division, but now they're in third, and it's for good reason. This Avs team is one of those really scary ones, and we all know what happened last year when we saw them in the playoffs. The Jets' lack of superstars and speed kind of put Winnipeg in a bind. Hellebuyck, really got hung out to dry, and I'm hoping that that's not the case this year. Winnipeg is back with a renewed confidence. Hellebuyck is putting up a career season, but I feel like the Jets still need some stuff to match up against a team like Colorado, just because, again, Winnipeg wins by committee, right? And if you're not facing McKinnon on the ice, you've got to win those matchups below. And that can be hard when everyone is spending so much energy trying to slow down McKinnon, who's playing like 30 minutes a night. So this is going to be a really, really hard road game, especially, consecutive nights of hockey. It's going to be a rough one, but, I'm hoping the Jets come away with a big win. I'm hoping Winnipeg can really come up with a signature victory on the road. This, for me, would probably be one of the most impressive victories, especially if they can do it while, either being even-ish at 5v5 or slightly better. I wouldn't really ask them to wallop the Avs, because I think that's going to be very difficult. But if they can at least match or slightly better them, that would be fantastic. But I would suspect this is probably going to be a schedule loss. This is just a very tough assignment. Eric Comrie's probably going to be in net. Can't imagine they play Hellebuyck twice in 2 nights. They have in the past, but I don't think they're going to do that now. It's probably not a necessity. So if I have to predict a scoreline, I would say 4-2 Colorado. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I think the Avs are certainly a team that's very fast, very skilled. They are a little vulnerable on the back end, and that's where the Jets can really make hay, especially if the top line gets going, if the depth lines are able to contribute, and if the Jets' power play can get up and early, that could be a huge difference maker. So there's a lot of ways to really, dice this team up and take advantage of a leakier back end, but it's going to have to be a really, hard-fought, very gritty victory, because this Avs team is fast, they're skilled, they have had the Jets number in the past. Let us hope that they do not for this game. Obviously, we'll have this coverage probably on Thursday, just because, tomorrow's, going to be New Year's, so we'll have a day off. But later this week, of course, you'll have this recap, and it should be, a good game. But as for the Jets, if they lose, it's not a big deal, right? Winnipeg has already been back on a good win streak, and so I'm not going to stress too much about it, but it'd be nice if we head into 2025 with a big, big road victory against the Colorado Avalanche. Leave your score predictions in the comments below, or on my social medias at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. For tonight's episode, though, that is going to be all the time that we have. Thank you so much for listening and making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. We'll see you back here, on Thursday. So thanks for listening. Have a great night. And as always, go Jets, go.